Today we're making chicken cutlets. If you grew up like I did in an Italian-American household, you know chicken cutlets were a staple. If you didn't, I'm sorry. I'm gonna show you how to make chicken cutlets today. This is the Kitchenista cooking class where I'm slowing down home cooking. You can grab the ingredients and cook right along with me. As we go, I will be sharing some culinary technique, food safety tips, culinary medicine tips, and of course, a delicious recipe that your family will love. My name is Jessica. I'm a physician assistant and certified culinary medicine specialist. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe for more videos just like this one. When I'm cooking at home, especially when I'm cooking with raw chicken, raw fish, raw meat, what I like to do is get all the tools I need out, get all the seasonings I need out, get everything prepped, and that way I'm not touching raw chicken and having to touch things. Could you imagine if I was touching raw chicken and then touching my spice jar and then touching raw chicken and then touching my spice jar? I'm going to cross-contaminate my kitchen. It's just not a great way to cook at home, not a very safe way to cook at home. So let's get everything set up and then we'll start to handle our chicken. We're gonna start out by seasoning our breadcrumbs. So what I like to do, use a dish that kind of has either a lip, I mean you could use a sheet pan if you wanted to, or a dish that has a little bit of a dome or some high sides here. So I'm gonna put my breadcrumbs, this here, I don't think this is high enough. I think my breadcrumbs are gonna go everywhere. That's why I'm not doing it directly in this pan. I just made these breadcrumbs very easy to make at home. They're very crispy, listen. Do you hear? Do you hear how crispy they are? And of course, you use day-old or stale bread, so it's a great way to stretch your groceries, right? You're getting more for your money and you're decreasing food waste. So I'm putting my breadcrumbs into my dish, okay? You can really season up your breadcrumbs however you want. I'm using granulated garlic, granulated onion, and cooking really, you can get creative. You can use whatever your family likes. You don't have to adhere so much to a recipe, just like baking. Parsley. Parsley is a must. You have to have dried parsley. This is parsley I dried from my garden last year. Basil. You could use a pre-done Italian seasoning. You could use an all-purpose seasoning. You could even buy breadcrumbs and use seasoned breadcrumbs. You could do whatever you want. This is oregano. I really think, I mean, chicken is like a blank canvas, so you can use whatever seasonings you want, but you have to use enough of them. I really think you need, especially when you're trying to cook in a healthful way, you really have to use a lot of dried seasonings and flavor to make the meal satisfying and enjoyable for your family. Speaking of healthful, my breadcrumbs, you can notice they were a little, if you did, I don't know if you noticed, they were a little bit darker brown in color. Yes, they're toasted, but they were a whole grain bread. So just another way to add nutrient density, fiber, nutrition is swapping out your refined grains for whole grains. You could use gluten-free whole grains like rice, right? Like a rice-based bread if you wanted to. You could use, if you do gluten, something like a whole wheat or a whole grain mix bread if you wanted to. Whatever you want is totally fine for this recipe. So there, oh, it smells so good already. It smells like growing up my mother's kitchen. So then we need some cheese. Now, if you wanted to make this dairy-free, you absolutely could use nutritional yeast or a dairy-free grated cheese if you wanted to. I'm using just a Locatelli Pecorino Romano. Typically, we would use Pecorino Romano growing up versus a Parmesan. But if you like Parmesan, use it. You could totally do that. So then just use your hands, mix it throughout. And what I love about the cheese in this breading, that fat is going to like sizzle and get like crispy cheesiness, almost like the top of mac and cheese when it starts to melt. It's gonna be so good. So, so good. All right, breadcrumbs, done. Okay, super easy. See how easy it is when you lay everything out? You can really just get to work when you're ready to cook. So now I'm gonna move these seasonings off to the side. And if I need them, obviously, I could add them. I can make another batch of breadcrumbs if I needed it, or I could just pop these back into the spice jar. I've not contaminated them, so it's fine just to put them back right now, as long as I don't touch them with dirty hands. So let me move them off to the side. All right, so there we go. Breadcrumbs are done. Don't need this anymore. Now I have 3 eggs. So we're going to, first, once we prep our chicken, then we're gonna dip it into the eggs, and then we're gonna dip it into the breadcrumbs. So we're going to crack 3 eggs into a similar bowl. See how it has a dome and high sides. You could absolutely use more of a standard mixing bowl if you wanted to, whatever you want. Just going to use a container here just to collect my shells. Crack. Now the correct way to do this is cracking my eggs into a separate little glass bowl to make sure I don't get a rotten egg and ruin the whole bunch. However, I know these are not rotten eggs because they're from my backyard chickens. So I'm not concerned at all that these are rotten. But if you're getting them from the grocery store or they're like a little older, I would definitely suggest cracking your egg in a little bowl and then putting it here into your dish. So 1, 2, and 3. Perfect. Then a little bit of water. This is always just what you do. You just add a little bit of water or a little bit of milk into this egg wash just to beat into the eggs. So now I'll grab a fork. We'll scramble our eggs. And that's it. I'm gonna get rid of this and this. And what I'm gonna do is move my cutting board over a little bit and my knife. So I have a nice sharp knife because we will be cutting up this chicken. So now I have a baking sheet. This is just a clean baking sheet and 2 pieces of parchment. I'll tell you about the parchment in just a second. This baking sheet I'm going to use to collect my breaded chicken. So I'll slice my chicken. We're gonna pound it out thinly. That is a really important part of making chicken cutlets at home. I'll pound it out thinly, then it goes into my egg wash, then into my breadcrumb, then onto my pan. And that way, when I'm ready to fry, I can heat up my oil and fry these all at once. I'm not going to dip, fry. That's just another way to cross-contaminate my kitchen, to make a mess. I might burn myself or I might burn my chicken. So we're getting it all breaded first, then we're gonna cook it all at once. We're going to cut the chicken breast. Now, when you buy chicken breast at the store, they look like this. These are about 4 or 5 ounce chicken breasts, boneless, skinless. You can either cut your chicken breast, and you'll see some people do it this way, where they take the knife and they go into the chicken breast and they'll have 2 thin cutlets. We're not gonna do that. You could, we're not going to do it. We're actually gonna cut it this way. Boop, boop, right down. We're gonna get 3 or 4 pieces per chicken breast. Now, why do I do this? This is really important when you think about the way the meat is and the way those proteins are. When you cut it this way, you can see the proteins go kind of across the chicken. So when I pound it out thin and we go to eat it, it's going to be juicy and soft and kind of pull apart. If I cut it this way, still fine, but it kind of doesn't go the opposite way of those proteins. Similar to when you're cutting steak, you really want to consider the way the grain of the meat goes. So by this way, I'm gonna pound it out, and then they're gonna be nice and tender, easy to cut with just a fork. You won't even need a knife. So I'm gonna use this pan right now just to collect these pieces of chicken, and then we'll pound it out all at the same time. I think 3 per breast is good. There's also the tenderloin that's on the breast. If you wanted to separate out the tenderloin, you could do that as well. I'm not going to. I'm just gonna go with it just like this. I got 12 pieces, so 12 chicken cutlets out of 1 package of chicken, that can really be stretched. Imagine if you put that on the side of a baked potato and some veggies. What a great budget-friendly meal, right? I'm going to take parchment paper. Now, these are bigger pieces of parchment paper. That's okay. I'm gonna put this on my cutting board. You really only need a piece as big as your cutting board is. And then I'm going to put a piece of chicken here and cover it with the other one. Now, some people do this in a plastic bag. Some people do this with saran or plastic wrap. I'm using parchment because 1, I had it, and 2, less plastic. Sometimes get concerned about plastic getting into the food when I'm pounding. That's why I want to use some parchment paper. So we're gonna get the back of a sheet pan, or you can get a meat mallet. I don't have a meat mallet, or you can get a rolling pin, and we're gonna pound out this chicken. I didn't get one out. I totally forgot before we got started here. So let me wash my hands and then I'll get it. Hands are clean. So now this is a really great recipe if you've had a stressful week, or it's a great recipe for kids. If you want kids to get involved in the kitchen, they can actually use both handles to pound the meat, or they can just use it kind of like a mallet. So that's what we're gonna do, okay? It's gonna be loud, but it's gonna be worth it. So here we go, let's pound this out. And what you're looking for is even thickness, about 1/3 of a quarter to 1/2 of an inch, 1/3 of an inch thick. Perfect. So let's keep going. It's about a 1/2 of an inch thick, you can see. And what really becomes super apparent when you start to pound it out are those fibers of the meat, kind of the grain of the meat like I talked about. See how they're going across the chicken cutlet? I can easily just cut it and it'll be nice and tender. So let's keep going. And you know, if you do this, like I just did this first one, a little too thin and it falls apart, who cares? Just make 2 little chicken cutlets. It's all gonna taste the same. No big deal, right? And really that's just kind of your snack. With those little ones, that's your snack as you're cooking the rest of them. And maybe we'll do 2 at the same time, right? Our parchment is big enough. Now, even though this rolling pin is not coming into direct contact with the chicken, it still has to get washed, right? This whole area is a dirty area. We still gotta wash that rolling pin when we're all done. I'm getting hungry. All right, so we are all done pounding our chicken breasts, and this parchment has to get thrown away. What I like to do also when I'm cooking at home is just keep a nice clean work surface. And when I say clean, I don't mean not contaminated, I mean free from clutter. It just makes the job a little bit easier to cook. And this is just a 2 by 3 work surface. You really don't need a lot of space to cook at home. I think that's a big challenge for a lot of my patients is they think, you know, as seen on TV kitchen, like my kitchen's not that big. I typically cook here at the island because it's convenient to educate and share, but you really don't need a super big space to just get the job done. You don't. This is my egg hand, this is my breading hand. I'm not going to touch this hand to egg, and I'm not gonna touch this hand to breadcrumbs. That's just an easy way to make sure that I keep my egg eggy and then my breadcrumbs breadcrumby. So into the egg wash until the entire chicken cutlet is breaded, and then I'll just press into the breading a little bit, like this, and press this side. Now some people dredge their fried chicken or their chicken cutlets in flour first, then egg. We never did it that way, ever, in my house. And to be honest, I think that the breading sometimes falls off. I've tried it that way for sure, but it just doesn't ever really seem to work for me. So I just don't do it anymore. So there we go. And it smells. You can smell the herbs, you can smell the cheese. Oh my God, it smells so good. All right, so there we go. And then we'll just keep going like this. I love to cook with, you know, we have had children live with us for sometimes a couple days, sometimes a couple months. Our most recent one was 1.5 years through the foster care system. So we are foster parents. And this is such a fun way to, because it's kind of like Play-Doh. You know, you're getting creative, you're doing an arts and craft project with kids. What a fun way, as long as you can trust them not to put their hands in their mouth, to get them involved. Even, you know, the pounding of the chicken, or if you wanted to get the breadcrumbs and just have them, instead of using a food processor, use the mixer, or excuse me, the rolling pin just to break everything up into smaller pieces. What a great way to teach kids life skills, but also give them confidence and make them feel good about something that they're creating, you know, and food that they're preparing for their family, you know? Here we go, just pressing. And you can see how one package of chicken has turned into so many chicken cutlets. Really, I think chicken cutlets are one of those things that you can really stretch, and they can go a very long way when cooking for a family. Now, if you wanted to make, you know, say this is too much, which is gonna be too much for my husband and I, you can freeze these. Just separate them out by parchment sheet papers. So lay them out, cooked, and then freeze them. And then once they're frozen, you're gonna put parchment between each of them. That's called flash freezing. You'll put parchment between each of them, and then you'll freeze them again, and that's how you store them long term. And that way they don't stick together. So you wanna flash freeze them so that way you can just like pull out 1 or 2 if you want to, pop it in your countertop oven, and have dinner kind of ready in a snap. So here we go. Just a few more chicken cutlets. And then of course the one that I accidentally broke, but that's all right. Once you bread it up and fry it up, it's gonna be totally fine. Now I am getting to the end of my breadcrumb. I could, if I wanted to, make some more breadcrumbs and season them up. I'm probably just gonna work with what I've got. If the last few don't get breaded, that's fine. They could be mine, or, you know, I'll just eat them tomorrow as leftovers. I'll make chicken salad or something. It's no big deal. But if you wanted to make extra, then just wash your hands. You have all the spices, like I have all my extra ones off to the side. Just load up your plate again. No big deal. There we go. Okay. That's the other thing about home cooking is it's not gonna be perfect. Like, It's not gonna be perfect, but it's probably gonna taste super good, even if it doesn't look like the most beautiful, right? And of course we have high protein here in the chicken and the egg, lots of dried spices that had no added salt, being mindful of that sodium, right? We did add salt, but we got to control that. We got to choose how much salt we wanted in our recipe. And then our breadcrumbs are 100% whole grain. It was a whole grain piece of bread that I used to make those, right? So a very nutrient dense option right here, and easy, and something that your kids are gonna love, your spouse is gonna love. Really, it's a fan favorite. All right, I'm going to wash my hands and then I will meet you over at the oven to fry these up. So my hands are clean, and before I touch my raw chicken again, I set up a station for my cooked chicken cutlets. So you don't want to start to fry these up and then have nowhere to put them. So this is a duplicate of the same sheet pan I have the raw chicken cutlets in, and I lined it with clean paper towels. You could use a lint-free towel, just a regular dish towel, though it definitely will get stained if you do that. I was just accustomed, growing up, we always use paper towels to catch any of that excess oil from frying. So I have a few different layers of paper towels here. I will set this off to the side. This is gonna be my clean side, my cooked side. These are gonna be my cooked tongs, okay? So when I put the chicken cutlets in there, I'm going to use my hands or a different set of tongs, put them in. I'll flip them with that same set of tongs. Then once they're completely cooked, I'll use my cooking tongs or my cooked clean tongs to remove them and put them onto my sheet pan. In the barbecue season is when I see this a lot, because people go out with one set of tongs and then just hold them off to the side and use them to remove the cooked items. That is a great way to cross-contaminate and cause foodborne illness, because you're essentially putting the germs from the raw meat right back onto the cooked meat. So don't do that, okay? All right, so this is an Our Place non-stick saute pan. This is the Always pan. You can use any pan you want, whatever you want. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil. Now, you can use olive oil or you can use avocado oil. This is a frying, it's just a pan fry. You don't need a lot, just a little bit, just to coat the bottom. Okay, so before I even heat it up, I'm just gonna coat the bottom. And that's all you need. I can add more olive oil if I needed to. I'm gonna bring this up to some low-medium heat. These are gonna cook fast, about 3 minutes per side, so you don't really need high heat. You don't wanna burn the breadcrumb that ends up settling at the bottom of the pan, nor your oil. So low-medium heat, just enough to coat the bottom of the pan, and we'll get to frying. Here we go. Oh yeah, baby. You hear that? I love that sound. I think 2 will fit into this pan nicely, so we'll do 2 at a time. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So good. The first pair of chicken cutlets are done, so I'll use my clean tongs to take them out of the pan and pop them on to my sheet pan. Are they not looking perfect? And the smell, I'm about to turn on my venting fan. I swear my neighbors are gonna come being like, what are you making for dinner? I'm going to continue to fry up the chicken cutlets, and I will meet you at the kitchen table. You can find this full recipe at thewellnesskitchenista.com. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe for more videos just like this one.